Ancient Greece, early and high classical art circa 480 to 400 BCE. The classical period opened with the Persian sack of the Athenian Acropolis in 480 BCE and the Greek victory a year later. During the early classical period, 480 to 450 BCE, sculptors revolutionized statuary by introducing weight shift to their figures, which is contrapposto. In the High Classical period, 450 to 400 BCE, Polycletus developed a canon of proportions for the perfect statue. Ictenos similarly applied mathematical formulas to temple design in the shared belief that beauty resulted from the use of harmonic numbers. Under the patronage of Pericles and the artistic directorship of Phidias, the Athenians rebuilt the Acropolis after 447 BCE. The Parthenon and its sculptures and those of Polycletus defined what it means to be classical ever since. Aegina and the transition to the classic period. This is the Temple of Aphaea looking southwest, Aegina, Greece, circa 500 to 490 BCE. It's a Doric ordered temple. It's a place of worship since the Bronze Age. We have widely spaced and slender columns. They minimized entasis, which entasis corrected the illusion of concave produced by straight shaft-on columns, so they got fatter in the middle. Double colonnade enabled a statue on the central axis to create an unobscured view for worshippers. There were volumized eknosis, which is a rounded molding below an abacus on a Doric column. Aphaea was a Greek goddess, initially associated with fertility and agriculture. 25 of the original 32 Doric columns still stand. This is a restored view of the facade of the Temple of Aphaea, Aegina, Greece, and it has a unified theme, a consistent scale. The pediment, remember the pediment is a triangular upper part of the front of a building. This is from the Temple of Aphaea. At the top, we have a dying warrior. It's from the west pediment of the Temple of Aphaea, Aegina, Greece, circa 490 BCE. And then down below, we have a dying warrior from the east pediment of the Temple of Aphaea, Aegina, Greece, circa 480 BCE. Early classical period is 480 to 450 BCE, with the Temple of Zeus at the bottom at Olympia at Athens, 470 to 456 BCE. And then we have the Temple of Hera II or Apollo at Paestum, Italy, circa 460 BCE. The Doric Temple of Hera II on the right is the best preserved of the three temples at Hera at Paestum, Italy. It's also constructed in limestone. It is a little bigger than Temple 1, which is Hera 1. The facades have 6 fluted columns and the long sides 14. Inside, it has a double row of slim Doric columns divided by the cella, which is the house of the deity, into 3 aisles, and one supported a rigid roof of wood and tiles. The columns do not have the typical 20 flutes on each column, but have 24 flutes. The Temple of Hera II resembles the Temple of Zeus at Olympia. Temple of Zeus at Olympia, Athena, Heracles, and Atlas with the apples of Hesperides. It's a metope from the Temple of Zeus in Olympia, Greece, circa 470 to 456 BCE. It is the early classical period. Heracles is the greatest Greek hero. Heracles founded the Olympic Games, and his 12 labors were the subjects of the 12 metopes of the Zeus temple. High classical period, circa 450 to 400 BCE. This is an image of the Acropolis. Acro means high and polis means city. This is showing the Acropolis. We have the Erechtheion, the Parthenon, Propylaea, the Temple of Athena Nike. There's a picture gallery and the statue of Athena Promachos. Here's an image of the Parthenon. It was created by Ictenos. This is at the Athena Acropolis in Athens, Greece, 447 to 438 BCE. A search for the ideal architectural proportions, and the golden mean. They were concerned with ratios. The Parthenons, constructed under the leadership of Pericles after the Persian sack of Athens in 480 BCE, destroyed the original Acropolis. Pericles used the extra funds from the Persian war treasury to build the Acropolis. Greek allies were furious. Greek predilection for algebra and geometry is omnipresent in the design of the building. Parts can be expressed as mathematical formula. There are 17 columns on a side, 8 columns on the front, and the ratio of the length to the width is 9 to 4. Proportions are the same for the cella. There's unusually light interior, had 2 windows in the cella. Floor curves upward in the center of the facade to drain off rainwater and to deflect the appearance of sagging at the ends. The columns at the ends are surrounded by light, which alters their appearance, so they are made thicker in order to look the same as the other columns. Ionic elements in a Doric temple. We have rear room contains Ionic capitals. There's a frieze on the interior, which is Ionic. Interior is built to house a massive statue of Athena, to whom the building was dedicated. The statue is made of gold and ivory over a wooden core. The Parthenon, this is a south side metope. It's a battle of the Lapiths and Centaurs. The Greek, they defeat the Persians. A square space between the triglyphs and a Doric frieze. The interpretations of these metopes are only conjectures starting from mere silhouettes of figures, sometimes barely discernible, and comparing them to other contemporary representations, mainly vases. There is one theme per side of the building, representing a fight each time. Amazonamaki, that's hard to say, in the west, fall of Troy in the north, Gigantomachy in the east, that's the fight between gods and giants. It has stars and Lapiths in the south. The metopes have a purely warlike theme, like the decoration of the statue, that is gold and ivory, of the Athena Parthenos, which is housed in the Parthenon. It seems to be an evocation of the opposition between order and chaos, between the human and the animal, sometimes animal tendencies in the human, between civilization and barbarism, even the West and the East. This general theme is considered to be a metaphor for the Median Wars and thus a triumph of the city of Athens. Here's the Athena Parthenos. It's made of gold and ivory. It's a patron deity of Athens. In late antiquity, it disappeared from the historical record, possibly taken to Constantinople, and there later destroyed. Fortunately, there are copies and representations, and so they were able to reconstruct to make this sculpture. So originally created by Phidias, Athena Parthenos. It's in the cella of the Parthenon in the Acropolis in Athens, Greece, circa 438 BCE. It's a model of the lost gold and ivory statue. The Parthenon, this is east pediment, Helios and his horses, and Dionysus. Parthenon sculptures are also called the Elgin marbles. The east pediment of the Parthenon, of Athena from the head of Zeus and other deities watching. There are 2 seated figures are the goddesses Demeter and Persephone. Sculptures comfortably sit in the triangular space of the pediment. It's classical art and shows contrapposto. The 3 goddesses, Hestia, Dione, and Aphrodite, possibly. The effect of the drapery reveals and conceals the forms of their bodies. Parthenon, the inner Ionic frieze with the Pathanaic festival, the Pathanaic procession. This celebrated the Athenians as much as Athena. In the top sculpture, we have young women and men. It's the detail of the procession from the Ionic frieze on the east side of the Parthenon, circa 447 to 432 BCE. And then down below we have the horsemen detail of the procession from the Ionic frieze on the north side of the Parthenon, which is circa 447 to 432 BCE. The Erechtheion. The Erechtheion is opposite of the Parthenon in the Acropolis. It is an Ionic temple. It's asymmetrical, and each side is different. It is created circa 421 to 405 BCE. Erechtheion, we have the Caryatides. It's also known as the Porch of the Maidens, the Caryatides of the South Porch. It's at the Acropolis in Athens, Greece, circa 421 to 405 BCE. They're known as the Porch of the Maidens. It's a Pentelic marble caryatids from the Erechtheion. We have 6 female figures that supported as columns the architrave in the south porch of the Erechtheion. The women wear a peplos pinned on each shoulder, hair is braided and falls in a thick rope down her back, probably held a sacrificial vessel in one of the missing hands. The weight she bears is taken on the right leg, hidden by perpendicular folds of the garment. The other leg is bent with the drapery clinging to it, the contrapposto pose. The head is surmounted by a capital with a bead and reel and egg and dart molding. Part of the abacus also survives. They represent the maidens who carried sacred objects used at the feasts of the gods. But early classical period, the Critios boys from the Acropolis, Athens, Greece, 480 BCE. The contrapposto is an Italian term meaning set against, used to describe the classical convention of representing human figures with opposing alternations of tension and relaxation on either side of central axis to give figure a sense of potential for movement. Lost wax casting, I have a video on Blackboard for this. First, a model is made from wax and encased in clay or casting plaster. When the clay is fired to make a mold, the wax melts away, leaving a void that can be filled with molten metal or other self-hardening liquid to produce a cast. This is a warrior from the sea off Briassi, Italy, circa 460 to 450 BCE, made of bronze. This is showing lost wax casting. A diagram. Greek classical sculpture. Classical sculpture is distinct from archaic in the use of contrapposto, that is the fluid body movement and relaxed stance that was unknown in freestanding sculpture before this. In addition, forms became highly idealized. Even sculptures depicting older people have heroic bodies. In the 5th century BCE, this heroic form was defined by Polycletus, a sculptor whose canon of proportions of the human figure had far effects. Polycletus wrote that the head should be 1/7 of the body. He also favored a heavy musculature with a body expressing alternating stances of relaxed and stressed muscles. Thus, on his spear bearer, 450 to 440 BCE, the right arm and the left leg are flexed, and the left arm and the right leg are relaxed, a weight shift. The crushing of Athens during the Peloponnesian War had a dramatic impact on the arts, which turned away from the idealizing canon of the 5th century BCE. In the late classical period of the 4th century BCE, gods were sculpted in a more humanized way. Praxiteles, the greatest sculptor of his age, carved figures with a sensuous and languorous appeal and favored a lanky look to the bodies. Hallmarks of 4th century work include heads that are 1/8 of the body and sensuous S-curve to the frame. Here's Polycletus's. He's got the canon for idealized proportions on the human figure. This Greek name of this sculpture is Doryphorus. It has a closed stance, an alternating tense and relaxed element of the body. We have a left arm and right leg relaxed, right arm, left leg are tensed. We have a block-like solidity, broad shoulders, thick torso, muscular body, movement restrained. This is a Spartan ideal of body. He's a warrior and athlete. Hand once held a spear. He averts his gaze. You may admire him, but he does not recognize the admiration. It's found in Pompeii and a place for athletic training. So this is a Roman copy after the original bronze of circa 450 to 440 BCE. It's made of marble. Tree trunk and brace strut are Roman additions. The Temple of Athena Nike, Callicrates, a specific Persian battle at Marathon, Temple of Athena Nike, Acropolis, Athens, Greece, 427, 424 BCE. We have Nike adjusting her sandal from the south side of the parapet of the Temple of Athena Nike at the Acropolis in Athens, Greece, circa 410 BCE. We have a graceful winged figure model in high relief, deeply incised drapery lines reveal body. It looks like wet drapery. Painting on the ceramic, we have a white ground painting technique. It's a warrior depicted taking leave of his wife. It's Lakythos is a flask to hold a perfumed oil. That's what this is. It is created by Achilles painter. Warrior taking leave of his wife. Athenian white ground Lakythos from Eritrea, Greece. Sorry, circa 440 BCE. There's a map of late classical period. We have Alexander the Great's empire. Shows battles and his route. Late classical art, circa 400 to 323 BCE. So in the aftermath of the Peloponnesian War, which ended in 404 BCE, Greek artists, though still adhering to the philosophy that humans are the measure of all things, began to focus more on the real world of appearances than on the ideal world of perfect beings. Late classical sculptors humanized the remote deities, athletes, and heroes of the 5th century. Praxiteles injected sensuality into his images, even representing Aphrodite nude. Lysippos depicted Heracles as a muscle-bound but so weary that he needed to lean on his club for support. In architecture, the ornate Corinthian capital became increasingly popular, breaking the monopoly of the Doric and Ionic orders. The period closed with Alexander the Great, who transformed the Mediterranean world politically and ushered in a new artistic age as well. I'll post this video on Blackboard. But this is the Alexander mosaic representing Alexander the Great on his horse during the Battle of Issus, 3rd century BC. Late classical period, humanization, we have Praxiteles, Aphrodite of Cnido. It's a Roman copy of the original marble statue, circa 350 to 340 BCE. Shows female nudity caused a controversy. Nudity is an everyday activity. The late classical period, we have Praxiteles, Hermes, and the infant Dionysus. It's a Roman copy of marble statue, circa 330 to 270 BCE. Shows human interaction. Late classical period shows emotionalism. We have a grave stele of a young hunter found near Ilissos River, Athens, Greece, circa 340 to 330 BCE. Late classical period has a new canon of proportion. We have spatial extension, Lysippos. This is a scraper from Rome, Italy. It's a Roman copy of a bronze statue. Polycletus the Younger, aerial view of a theater, Epidaurus, Greece, circa 350 BCE. We have a theatron and then an orchestra area. It's the theater of Epidaurus. In the late classical period, Tholos is a temple with a circular plan. It's also the burial chamber of a Tholos tomb. Here's an image of a Corinthian capital. The Polycletus the Younger, the Corinthian capital from Tholos, Epidaurus, Greece, circa 350 BCE. The first known use of the Corinthian column is the mausoleum of Halicarnassus. Hellenistic art, circa 323 to 30 BCE. The Hellenistic age extended from the death of Alexander the Great until the death of Cleopatra, when Egypt became a province in the Roman Empire. In art, both architects and sculptors broke most of the rules of classical design. At Didyma, for example, the Temple of Apollo had no roof and contained a smaller temple within it. Hellenistic sculptors explored new subjects such as aged, bent women and Gauls with strange mustaches and necklaces. They treated traditional subjects in new ways. For example, athletes had battered bodies and faces, and openly erotic goddesses. Artists delighted in depicting violent movement and unbridled emotion. Hellenistic period is 323 to 30 BC. This is the altar of Zeus. It's reconstructed west front of the altar of Zeus, Pergamon, circa 175 BCE. This is an example of Hellenistic art. We have Athena battling Alcinaeus. It's a detail of the gigantomachy frieze. It's the altar of Zeus. Pergamon, Turkey, circa 175 BCE. It is made of marble. It's 7 feet and 6 inches high. It is a frieze of the altar of Zeus. It alluded to the battle of King Attulos I over the Gauls. It's the gigantomachy. It's the struggle between the gods and the giants. Hellenistic period, Nike alighting on a warship. Nike Samothrace from Samothrace, Greece, circa 190 BCE. She's meant to stand in or above a fountain, cascading water around rocks below, similar to a figurehead of a boat. It has wet drapery. It imitates a water playing on a wet body. Shows evidence of invisible wind on her body. There's a dramatic twist and contrapposto of the torso. There's monumentality of the figure. Her missing right arm may have raised a victory crown or held an open hand in greeting. Perhaps she was landing on the prow of a ship. The boat at the base is a battleship with oar boxes and traces of a ram. It was probably built to commemorate a naval victory in 190 BCE. Nike is a symbol of victory. It was found in 1863 in situ on Samothrace. Examples of the Hellenistic period where we have a true likeness in portraiture with Polycletus, Demosthenes, and then we have social realism, an old market woman, and then we have eroticism. We have Aphrodite, Venus de Milo, Greece, circa 150 to 125 BCE. In the Hellenistic period, we have Laocoon, the Laocoon here. In true Hellenistic fashion, Laocoon and his sons, they showcase an interest in the realistic depiction of movement. In the action-packed scene, 3 figures frantically try to free themselves from the grasp of sinuous serpents. In Virgil's Aeneid, the Laocoon and was a priest of Poseidon who was killed with both of his sons after attempting to expose the ruse of a Trojan horse by striking it with a spear. He begged the Trojans to set fire to the horse to ensure it was not a trick. Laocoon did not give up trying to convince the Trojans to burn the horse, and Athena made him pay even further. She sent 2 giant sea serpents to strangle him and his 2 sons. So Athenodorus, Hagisandros, and Polydros of Rhodes. Laocoon and his sons is from Rome, Italy, early 1st century CE. And I believe this is the last slide. Yes, the end.